All right, so after 7 long years, we finally have a Star Wars movie coming back to theaters this coming weekend. I was able to see it early last night at an advanced screening. I had to drive 2.5 hours out there and then 2.5 hours back. So I had a lot of time to sit and marinate in my thoughts whenever it comes to my overall experience with this film. Quickly, before we get started though, do me a favor. If you're new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button, like button, turning on post notifications, whatever you want to do to support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm going to try my best to be as active as I can over this summer. I have a little more free time, but I've learned my lesson in not making promises that I can't keep just because of how busy my life is with just finishing up college, searching for jobs right now. So things are a little hectic, but I love doing content, so I'm going to try my best to do as much as I possibly can this summer. So going into this movie, I think most of us have a history with The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Season 1 and 2, I really like. Have they diminished in quality a little bit as the years have gone on? Certainly, they're not as strong narratively, but they're a lot of fun. They're more akin to George Lucas Star Wars than anything else that we have gotten over the last several years. So seasons 1 and 2 I really enjoy. Season 3, not so much. I tried rewatching it last week. It's rough. It's a rough watch. It is so directionless. There are so many moments and just whole episodes where it really doesn't feel necessary that we're exploring what we're exploring in that moment. And then by the time you get to the end of that season, you're like, yeah, that was unnecessary. We didn't need all of that. It does a lot of meandering. There's a lot of filler stuff in that season. So for that reason, it's not as strong, and they make some crazy weird creative decisions whenever it comes to just who they're propping up in that, who they're backseating. I'm more so speaking about them propping up what's her face, Bo-Katan, more than Din Djarin, who needed more development, I think. And that's one of the things I wanted going into this movie, but that season just, it was kind of a mess overall. So I didn't have a ton of hype going into this movie. The marketing was also very, very lackluster. There's been some drama this week with influencers getting invited out to Disney Springs, I think it was, or Disneyland, where they were going to unveil the new edition of Smuggler's Run that they have in the park. That's the Millennium Falcon ride. And Pedro Pascal surprised them. And they kind of, Disney tried to pass it off as if they were random fans, but no, they were selected influencers. No one has any beef with the influencers themselves, aside from some few crazy people on Twitter. But most people are just kind of fed up with the disingenuous marketing that this movie has been pulling. And that was by far the biggest example of that disingenuous marketing that we've been seeing over the last month or so. So going into this, like I said, the marketing wasn't all that appealing. I thought it looked fine, but I didn't see a real reason as to why this was being turned into a movie and not just another season of the show. And based off of the box office projections going into this weekend, it doesn't look all that hot. It's tracking about on the same level as Solo, which ended its theatrical run under $400 million, which this movie needs to make over to break even. So it's not looking too hot. It doesn't seem like the appeal is that widespread. And after seeing it, I'm pretty mixed, but I'm falling more on the negative side. To answer my question of whether or not this should have been a movie, no, it had no business being a movie. This easily could have been a Disney Plus special or just another season, a smaller season of the show put on Disney Plus, and I feel like you wouldn't have noticed the difference. There were very few moments in this movie where I was like, wow, they really upped their game for the theater. No, it all kind of just looked the same as the show. And say what you will about the sequel trilogy, and God knows I certainly don't like them, but they had, undoubtedly, they had a cinematic flair to them that this movie is missing. Rogue One and Solo had that cinematic flair. This simply doesn't have that. Granted, I know times are tough for VFX artists, and that's not the only underlying issue. There are some pretty wonky shots in this. A lot of it has to come down to the direction, even though I love Jon Favreau, and then the cinematography as well. But the VFX and all of those other elements combined really didn't make it feel like a theatrical experience. It doesn't feel like something you should spend your hard-earned money on. Go and see it in the theater, because there's really not that much of a difference from what we were seeing in the show. I think that the highlight of the show whenever it comes to visuals was, even though I don't like season 3 as much, the scene where Bo-Katan and Mando are escaping her planet where they blow up her castle. That scene has some great visual effects. And I would say nothing in the movie looked better than that. It was all about on par or maybe even a little bit lower than that. But as I was saying before, I know VFX artists have it tough right now. We're living in a pretty hard age for those artists, and I don't want to come down on them at all, but they had almost 16 months of post-production with this movie, and I feel like with that time given, from what we know, granted, we don't know all the behind the scenes stories and issues that may have come up during post-production, but I feel like with what we know of that 16-month window, that's a very long time for movies to go from being finished filming, and they do work on VFX before filming is finished. They're sending dailies and doing like rough cuts of the visuals as they're filming stuff. But with the time that we know they had, 16 months, that seems like plenty of time to make it look visually appealing for cinemas. And I just didn't get that feeling. And kind of sticking on the same subject of whether or not it should have been a movie, whether it was deserving of that, this story doesn't really call for it at all. This feels like exactly what season 3 was setting up, with it just being him working for the New Republic now, with Grogu by his side, him getting side quest missions, bounties to go and pick up and bring back to the New Republic. And this feels like one of the middle tier stories that we could have gotten with exploring that bounty hunting side for the New Republic. It doesn't feel like the best story that they could have gone with. I feel like there were other bounties and other missions that he went on that had to have been far more interesting than what we got with this movie. I say bounty, but I mean jobs, really. That's basically what they set up at the end of season 3. But the entirety of this really does feel like a side quest mission. It feels like the filler arc in the middle of one of the earlier seasons that really didn't need to be added, but was there for fluff, just to pad time. That's really what this feels like. And unfortunately, this never reaches the heights of the show. This is very much a middle tier Mandalorian episode. Like I said, there's nothing in it that reaches like the heights of season 2 and even the end of season 1. In terms of my overall opinion of this movie, I think I would sum it up as hype and aura, the movie. There's not much development or little to no development for its 2 lead characters, which I was really hoping we would get after the lackluster season 3, where we really didn't see much development there. And I felt like since they were moving this from the small to the big screen, it should have had a little more oomph to it. Hi, doggo. I'm being interrupted right now. But where was I? Oh, yeah. Hi, other dog. The character development. It's just really not there. It's not something you would expect from a movie. Din is basically the same overprotective father that he's been since the inception of this show, and Grogu is still the cutesy pootsy little baby that coos and ahs and sometimes understands what Din is saying, and sometimes when the script calls for it, he doesn't understand because they want to make a humorous moment out of it. That's one of my biggest qualms with this movie. It doesn't feel like it's evolving the story of these 2 characters, or these 2 characters in general. It feels like the maturity has gone backwards since the inception of this show. And, you know, we had cutesy pootsy Grogu in the first season, cutesy pootsy Grogu in the second, same thing in the third, and it's the same thing in this. There's been no evolution to the character, and granted, he ages slower, but I would at least think by now, after living 50 years in the galaxy and hearing basic or English all of his life, he would at least understand what the Din is trying to say to him sometimes. And there are so many scenes, like that speeder chase scene that they released about a month back now, of Din communicating to Grogu inside of the Razor Crest, the new Razor Crest, and he's just not understanding what he's saying and launching missiles at him. That happens several times throughout this movie, and it's like, come on, you're doing that for a humorous moment. I get it. Oftentimes it's funny, oftentimes it's not. But I feel like the whole novelty of Grogu is really starting to wear off, at least for me. And with there being no evolution of these characters, especially him, you know, Din is just kind of like the badass John Wick figure, and he fits that to a T in this movie. He has his moments, but Grogu, I feel like, takes up a lot of this movie that really didn't need to be in there. And that brings me to another problem I have with it, is the pacing. The pacing is all over the place with this thing. I feel like the first third of this movie does a really good job of establishing the story. While there are some issues with the first third, it at least sets up these characters to be going on an adventure. And then it has moments where it really slows down, builds back up pretty high, and then slows down for another 10 minutes. I mean, there's so many moments in this movie, so many sections of the film where the momentum is just completely killed. And that, for me, made it the first Star Wars movie where I checked my watch at least 3 times. I mean, I really felt the runtime with this. I feel like they could have afforded to cut 15 to 20 minutes of this easily. I genuinely think it goes on for way too long. And when they announced the runtime to this, I was like, oh, a little over 2 hours. That seems perfect for a movie like this. This could have been an hour 45, an hour and 50 minutes, and I think it would have flowed much better. When it comes to other characters in this movie, I know I'm all over the place whenever it comes to my talking points, but other characters in this, okay. Zeb's okay. It was cool to see him from Rebels. Embo is pretty cool. I was expecting him to be the main villain of the movie. He has a presence in the movie, but he's not the main villain. And I feel like that was kind of a bait and switch with the trailers. They made it seem like he was going to be the big bad. I don't remember the main villain of this. I mean, there's kind of a few, but the main villains in this movie aren't really highlighted in the trailer as much as Embo, I would say. So I feel like they kind of pulled a fast one on us by putting like a scary figure from the Clone Wars that hardcore fans would know of, putting him in the trailers and teasing us with that. And he's not in it as much as I would have liked, though there is a cool sequence with him towards the end of the movie. Sigourney Weaver is barely in this movie, and since she was side by side with Pedro and the Grogu puppet and Jon Favreau for most of this press tour, I was thinking she was going to be a supporting character in this, but I just found out she was only on set for a few days, which makes sense because she is barely in this thing. I would say she maybe has 5 to 8 minutes of screen time, if that. But I feel like I've gone over a lot of the more negative stuff. I do want to highlight some positives about this. The score by Ludwig Göransson is fantastic. I mean, he had no right doing this movie. I think he didn't do season 3 because of scheduling conflicts that he had. But this movie doesn't really fit his library, if I'm being completely honest with you, or his resume. But he definitely upped the ante with this. It feels bigger, the score does, than the show. I really liked the synthetic feeling that it had, and it plays well with the action set pieces. Like I said, there are some cool action set pieces in this that really will entertain you, but everything else just kind of bogs it down and brings it down to a middle of the road, maybe even less than that Star Wars movie. I went into this trying to be as kind as possible. I really wanted to like it, but at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but I really didn't find all that much enjoyment out of it. I feel like this is going to be one of those Star Wars movies that is not memorable whatsoever. It is very, very forgettable. And I think that all comes down to the pacing, these characters not having as much evolution as I would have liked. There's no cameos or anything of the sort, which really didn't need to happen in this movie. I wasn't expecting it. But there's no like, oh shit moments in this movie that make it a talking point and make it seem like it's going to be something that people remember. It really does just feel like a filler arc in the middle of one of the earlier seasons. And it really could have fit as a filler arc in the middle of the 3rd season. It kind of aligns with some of those moments in the 3rd season where I was like, this was not needed whatsoever. So overall, I really did want to like this. I really, really did. I hate being negative on Star Wars, but this is the place we find ourselves at right now, where it's very, very hit and miss. I would say more miss than hit. Maul Shadow Lord just came out. That was amazing. And then we get this, which is such a step down in terms of story and action and just big moments that Star Wars is known for. So I went in really trying to like it and give it its shot and give it its flowers, but I was expecting way, way more out of this. At the end of the day, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, right in the middle of the road. I mean, there's some enjoyment there if you're looking for not much at all. If you go into this with very low expectations, those expectations will probably be met. And I didn't want to be pessimistic and go into this with low expectations. I tried to, think, oh, this is going to be a good time. It's going to have some moments that I really like. And I came just under that. So at the end of the day, I was underwhelmed. But let me know what you guys thought down in the comments below. Have you guys seen it yet? I know they had a bunch of screenings last night, so I'm sure some of you have seen it. If you haven't, keep it spoiler free, even though there's really not much to spoil in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, subscribe button, turn on post notifications, whatever you guys want to do to support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. So hopefully you did enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one.